I love the works of Mary Shelley. I also enjoy the works of Chu Gong. One is taught in colleges, and one isn't. Why is that?
Anime can inspire creativity and encourage the development of critical thinking skills through its rich narratives and intricate character development. Universities have an ivory tower mentality, so they hesitate to teach anime because of the perception that it lacks academic rigor compared to traditional subjects. Bridging the gap between different forms of written literature and animated media, anime has the same laudable themes of overcoming adversity and speak to the human condition. But both of my parents, who are college professors, do not see it that way. They look down on anime. In order to combat this, my brother and I snuck into the professor's office and turned it into our podcast studio and filled it with manga and other anime items.
So please, join my brother and I as we try to convince our father, the professor, that solo leveling is in fact a work of art and should be treated as such.
With Freud being the theme today, I thought we would start off with the Oedipus complex. So, tell me, do you love your mother? If you do, does this remind you of your mother? No. Well, maybe it's this. Oh, this would remind you of your mother. Obviously, you have amnesia. Because if that does not remind you of your mother, I do not know what will.
Nathaniel, that's a Rorschach test, bro. That has nothing to do with Freud. What are you talking about right now?
Muzzles.
I guess we can talk about the Oedipal complex if you want. What about the Oedipal complex do you want to talk about, Nathaniel?
Well, one thing in general. Do you love your mother?
Yes, Nathaniel, I loves my mother. What's your point right now?
Do you hate your father for beating you like a bad donkey?
No, Nathaniel, I don't hate my father for beating me like a bad donkey.
No. Well, that's not what it says here on the Oedipus complex. It says, and I state, you are in love with one parent while hating the other.
I will not talk to you if you keep wearing that beard, dude. I'm not wearing a beard. You're not wearing a beard. Let's
say that to that thing on your face. In fact, I got you a better one.
You know I already have a beard. You know that, right? It's right here. Here.
Well, by the end of the day, you will either be wearing this beard over that beard or you will shave.
There's no way I'm shaving, and there's no way I'm wearing that beard either, dude.
By the end of this episode, you'll be wearing this beard with this pipe in your mouth. I swear it.
Okay. Let's go ahead and talk about, you know what the Oedipal complex is? What is the Oedipal complex?
It's a Freudian.
Okay, I'm not talking to you if you still have the beard on and you're still doing the accent. Okay. Get rid of the beard, please. Thank you very much.
Give me one second.
Okay. What about the Oedipal complex? Okay. Do you know where the Oedipal okay, so we're talking about Freud, psychoanalysis, Oedipal complex. Do you know where the Oedipal complex, where it's based in like literature and mythology? Do you know?
No, I don't. I don't think I found in mythology.
No. So what happens is it goes back to Sophocles around 5 BC. The whole story about how all of a sudden, you have this prophecy that you have a son that's going to grow up, kill his father, marry his mother. So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. They go send the child away to be killed. He isn't killed. He's adopted by a farmer. Long story short, he comes back. He finds his father on the road, kills his father, marries his mother. And by the time he finds out and everyone's in shame, he like plucks out his eyes. And there you go with Oedipus Rex. So what are you trying to say when it comes to Freud and Oedipus right now?
Well, right now I'm actually German accent. Right now, I'm actually trying to compare it to solo leveling. Do you think that Jinwoo's motivation for like trying to save his mother and somewhat kill and replace his dad to get stronger, do you think that has any form of like lining up?
Well, it would be slightly forced to put a Freudian interpretation of the Oedipal complex on that, but I see what you're talking about because one of his motivations is to take care of his mother. Part of the Oedipal complex isn't just sleeping with your mother, it has to do with like a hatred for your father. This actually goes towards some of Freud's concepts of growing up as a child. It's kind of hard to separate the affections that you have for your mother, like that affection, that maternal affection. And so you kind of see that in Solo Leveling when it comes to Jinwoo taking care of his mother, taking care of his sister, and his dad being absent, right? But I don't know if within the manga if there's any strong kind of reflection of animosity that he has towards his dad, you know?
No, it doesn't actually say he hates his dad, but if there's a vacant father role, he's trying to take over it. You know, the father role is taking care of the family, being like the role model, and he is leveling up to take care of his family. That when he first started, I don't remember exactly what he said, but he said something along the lines of when he found out he could make the potion to heal his mom, he said, like, this is my motivation. I can get stronger so I can make this potion and heal my mom.
Sure, without question, that can fall within the edible structure, right? So, I mean, one of the main and first accomplishments in the manga that he has is when he finally collects all the 3 aspects to the elixir of life. What is it? Is it the elixir of life?
Yeah, it's elixir of life. I don't remember the ingredients.
Yeah, right. Don't remember the ingredients, but like he has to literally traverse hell to get it in order to act as that good son in the replacement of the father who's no longer there.
Yeah. I want you to know that I have no intention of ever replacing you, besides if the need be, like if the time comes. But I have no intention of currently going for your role as president of this house. But I do wonder, is your mental state okay? You didn't even answer the Rorschach test. David here saw a chicken. You didn't see anything.
I'm fine.
Are you sure? What dreams have you been having as of late, Father? Are you Spider-Man in your dreams?
No.
Are you Superman in your dreams?
I don't dream much, Nathaniel.
Why? That
because I'm always tired, having to deal with work and having to deal with this sometimes.
Tired, yes. Almost like in a sense of vulnerability, admitting to your own weakness.
Well, you know, what is it? Well, in your vulnerabilities, you'll find your strength, right?
Who said that?
Freud, dude.
Wait, no more Freud quotes. David, roll the clip. Hurry up before he starts quoting.
No, that's actually some pretty good points that you're bringing up earlier. I mean, one of the things that Freud focuses on primarily is the idea that he's trying to get to the source of like human unhappiness. It's focused on whether or not happiness can be developed and whether it's an aspect of like healthier psychology, right? And one of the things he points to when it comes to the development, and probably why he started with Oedipus to begin with, was he covers a great deal of the pleasure principle. Do you know much about the pleasure principle at all?
Yeah, I do know some of it. In fact, I have a theory about the pleasure principle linking back to Psalm 51 to be exact.
Okay, what's
But-
Psalms 51? Go ahead.
Psalm 51 5, this specific one, I was sinful at birth, sinful by the time my mother conceived me. Almost like following a hedonistic type thing, right?
Dude, that's kind of pretty interesting because one of the examples that Freud gives, I believe, is he actually compares the pleasure principle to infants. When you're an infant, the only thing you do is pursue pleasure. You just produce pleasure. If you get like a 3-year-old or a 2-year-old and stick him in a room with candy and vegetables, guess what they're going to eat like crazy?
The candy.
To their detriment, to their unhealthy health. And so by bringing in and dealing with the pleasure principle of infants, so much of society that's guarded around us is to limit that. But there's a lot of neuroses that develops from those limitations because a lot of that has to be coerced. It has to be forced. And so to limit that unhealthy aspect of the pleasure principle, society puts constraints on us. They limit us in a lot of different ways.
Clothes.
Right, by wearing clothes. I mean, think of a way that an infant would act and the way that a parent would instruct that infant to act according to the social mores of the time. But you can also extend that to like external forms of government. You can extend that into social and cultural constructions. All of this is seen to be to a level of suppression. I mean, maybe suppression is a better word than constraint. But in evaluating solo leveling, we know the very concept that if you look at Jinwoo, I think we talked about this last time, there are things that he avoids when it comes to exercising what you would consider to be hedonistic pleasure, right?
Yes.
But what's the problem with this situation? He's created a new structure of power, right? He's in that structure of power. What's the problem with being in his new structure of power, which is outside those social and cultural controls?
Well, I'd say it's that he has no limit, right? That he doesn't have a bar. There is no limit. He can keep expanding and growing stronger.
So in his strength, he can get to the point where he has like almost like a god status, right?
Yes.
There's no constraints there for him. There's no constraints whatsoever. It's the idea of breaking away from any kind of societal constraints. So I mean, we haven't hit the id, the ego, and the superego yet.
Yeah.
But right now, before we even get there, we can tell you when it comes to Jinwoo, society can no longer limit him. He can no longer be limited. He is leveling up to the point where the exercise of any desire that he so chooses, it can be utilized. So that's the interesting thing. If you go back to the Oedipal structure or the Oedipus structure, is that we do know later on in the Mawa, he does come across his father, right?
Yes.
But when he does, is he stronger than his father?
Yeah, I think so.
And does his father die?
Yes.
Okay, so that's interesting.
But I would like to say really quick, go back to the he's outside of society. There was a part in the manga I distinctly remember where this one lady tried to measure his strength because she had this unique power of actually boosting people. And she stated like his power comes from something else that's not like everyone else.
Yeah, like this darkness and shadow kind of thing.
Yes.
But that's going to be later when we're talking about Carl Jung with embracing the shadow and the death of the ego. That's a little bit different. But right now, the whole point with this, at least discussion, this part of the discussion, because I actually would like to move on to the id, the ego, and the superego, because when you talk about Freud, you can't get past that, right? Because a lot of other psychology is built off of that. But specifically right now, when you look at the fundamentals of what Freud is applying, it doesn't apply to Jinwoo. It doesn't apply to him later on in the Mawa. It does earlier, but not later.
So I'd like to bring up really quick the origin of neuroses. You know what that is, right?
I know neuroses is like mental health issues. What about it?
Yeah. So do you think Jinwoo has any mental anxieties or emotional symptoms?
Absolutely. The entire storyline of Solo Leveling is that he's fighting a bigger monster, a bigger struggle, a big old struggle. He feels like first he has like the weight of not dying at the beginning, being an E rank, to then having to take care of his mother and sister, to then eventually saving the world and the cosmos kind of stuff and reality. So like a lot of this, I'm sure, has to do with a great deal of like anxiety or stress. And so why you're trying to say that he's developed certain neuroses? What do you think that looks like?
Well, I think he's developed pride with. I think he's developed pride with his coming powers. But yeah, I do think he also has anxiety. Remember that one part in the manhwa where orcs attacked his sister's school, and because the orcs attacked his sister's school, he decided to stay with his sister and protect her, while Japan had to deal with the Giant's Gate. And because he didn't go there, it caused more problems than if he was there. Do you think that was one of his anxieties?
Sure. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. Any major conflict that occurs to Jinwoo is, since he's higher than other people, he puts it on his back and he has to deal with. But I mean, that doesn't necessarily fall into the direction of him developing a significant neuroses that's going to stick with him. If anything, it's when he was weak, when he was at the beginning, that's when you see him having like a complex. while people are talking about him behind his back, where he's like, yeah, I'm the weakest. Yeah, I can't help it. Whenever he goes into the dungeon, he's very scared. He's very concerned. He's always getting stabbed. He's always getting hurt. If anything, it's the aggrandizement of this higher strength, this higher power, this continual leveling up. That I would say his anxiety almost goes down. And if anything, tell you the truth, if we're going to go Freudian, and Freudian stays a lot with the principle in infants, he has an entire analysis of it where he talks about different phases that children kind of go through. Those phases are almost more closely aligned with the first earlier chapters or the earlier season of solo leveling than what he has to deal with later, right?
Yeah. But I do have a question. How do you see it that way? The early, what's it called? Freud says is like the oral phase and the anal phase. Yeah.
The phallic phase.
Yeah. The oral phase states that pleasure comes from your mouth. It's almost like you perceive the universe with your mouth since you're a baby and you don't really know how to control.
Right. This first part has to be in the context of an infant. You know, I mean, the suppression and the structure of it. He's trying to show the way that when you grow up, these things come into place and you're going from different phases, right? I mean, it can have further extensive applications, but think of it as simply like if you think of a little kid, the reason why he's first orally fixated is because everything's about consumption. Everything's about eating. Everything's about eating. It's what you take in. It's what you take in. It's what you take in. You take in. Then when it comes to the anal phase, the reason why he's bringing that up is because that's when you start to have constraints. That's when all of a sudden parents come up and try to potty train you. Mm-hmm. They say, no, don't do that. No, don't eat that. No, don't stick that in your mouth. Don't swallow that. Don't do this. And you start to learn those constraints and those restrictions that are there. And then finally, okay, I'll let you explain the last part. What's the phallic phase?
Phallic phase is, that's like the worst phase things. Isn't that when children
you started with Oedipus, bro? What are you talking about? Now all of a sudden you're getting all sensitive?
I don't like it. I like making fun of other people for it. I don't like explaining myself. That's when the phallic phase is when like children direct their sexual impulses to their parents. I myself can say I've never done that. Not once.
Well, you just stick your neuroses deep down then.
No, I don't.
No. So I get it. So these are the phases, and what if you really look about it, what Freud's talking about is when he comes to these mental debilitations, when he comes to these negative neuroses, he's trying to explain the progression going there. There is a couple of times that Jinwoo has like this mental break.
Yes.
A couple of times, and I can give you a couple of examples. The first one is when he dies on the sunstone, the sacrificial stone.
Yep,
okay.
that one.
When he's like looking at everyone, we kind of hit this last time. He's like, you guys left me, you abandoned me. You know, I want to live too. I had family too. That's the first one. The second one that's even more significant is when he goes into that cave with that cohort of people. Now that he's getting stronger and he faces the spider.
Yeah.
And they kill him. They tried to kill him.
Yeah.
They tried to murder him. And it's the first time he kills humans. He kills 5 of them, right?
Yes.
And that's the moment where you guys are despicable. You guys are terrible. And he gets up and there's that very violent scene and when he kills all 5 humans. Mm-hmm. And even when people are begging him for mercy, please don't kill me, he still does it. You can point to that as the neuroses of an expression of what was latently there and the catharsis of it. And it's one of the things that's found in psychoanalysis, that when you dig deep into some of those things that people repressed, the biggest way to notice that they even are latently there is eventually they're giving out with not just mental limitations, but also expressions of a perceived and applied violence.
So after this, well, right now, actually, let's go over the id ego and superego, right? There was actually this one iceberg principle. David, do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember it.
Could you go over it really quick?
Well, Freud came up with this iceberg theory. There are 3 main parts. The top part, which is the part that's above the water, is the consciousness. That involves the thoughts and perceptions. The part that's under the water, that is right below the surface, is called the preconscious. That stores memory and stored knowledge. And the lowest part, the part that's under the water that no one can see, the bottom tip, it has the unconscious and the instincts, fears, and selfish motives.
Which is the
id,
breakdown
right?
of the id, the ego, and the superego. Right?
Yeah, right. That's the id.
Right.
The unconscious. So we went over it already, I think.
Yeah. We went over it.
For
like
those
the unconscious,
who,
the pleasure principle, the
for those who
childlike,
didn't really get it.
the childlike, like infantile pursuits of desire. Go ahead.
Yeah. So now I'd say usually it's layered like this: id, ego, superego. But I'd actually like to cover the superego next, which, to my understanding, is the complete opposite of the id pleasure principle. Whereas the superego is the moral high ground, the like standard that you're supposed to be held to, the mask you put on in public, almost, right?
Sure, if you want to put like a really reductive principle of it, that like manifestation of the angel and the demon on your shoulder.
Yeah.
Supposedly, you know, the angel is going to be the super ego, and you're the one who's the ego balanced in the middle.
Yeah.
But like the idea of, once again, I don't know too much about this, but when it comes to the super ego, it's supposed to be those outside constraints of the moral principle.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the things, like if you're going to do something, it's like, don't do it. You know, if you want to pursue it, don't pursue it. You know, you want to stick your hand in fire, the fire's hot, don't do that. You know, it's those limitations that are there. And the thing that Freud is trying to do is stick them in opposition from each other. It's like the construction of Solomon's baby, you know, the two mothers. You know,
Yes.
the idea where it's kind of like, you know, just rip the baby in half. It almost feels like you're that individual character who's being ripped to a different size by the id and by the super ego.
Very weird comparison.
No,
but okay.
it's not a comparison, it's an analogy of it. But then in the middle, what do you have?
The ego, right?
The ego. What's the ego made up of?
Isn't it like your compromise? Like from the example of what I understand it, your id is like, I want to do this. Your super ego is like, no, that's bad. And so your ego would make a compromise off of what the id wants and what the super ego.
So if I remember, the id is the unconscious. The super ego is a combination of the conscious and the unconscious, and then the ego is the consciousness, right?
Yes.
A lot of the times is what you're aware of receiving, what's necessarily happening, but you're being struggling in between. And those either, so for instance, if you pursue the pleasure principle, it causes some problems. If you suppress the pleasure principle, it causes some problems too. And so like the idea of the avoidance of some of these kind of like neuroses is hard to kind of like come across. But like, let's go ahead. I think it's really very well broken down in Solo Leveling when it comes to the principle of the id, the superego, and the ego. Like I'll give an example. There are some times in which Jinwoo just goes berserk and like just destroys everything, right?
Yeah.
And there's sometimes that he's trying to balance himself off with it. Like a lot of times he puts the perception that he's fighting not just for himself, but for humankind, for the people that he cares about, for the people he wants to preserve. But then at the same time, there's a pleasure that he has within the destruction, right? The pleasure that he has within the destruction is the id. The idea of putting under the veneer of like he's taking care of other people and it's a moral reason why he's expressing such violence, that's the superego. And there's a point where he's stuck in the middle, right? A good, an amazing representation of this, a crazy good representation. It was the first time I was like going through Soul Level, like, dude, this is interesting, was when you were showing me actually the anime, not the manga, but the anime. And a lot of people, when it comes to introduction, you know, when you're watching on Crunchyroll or whatever, they skip the introduction, or once the anime ends, you push a stop. But actually, the end credits is one of the most interesting aspects that I've seen so far in Solo Leveling, because they still keep it bifurcated into the two characters. The end credit shows him walking through like this Grecian hall with guards everywhere.
Of season 2, right?
No, it's season. I don't remember what season it is, but he's walking through like this Grecian guy, you know, and there's guards everywhere and through these big halls. And then it shows himself before he started leveling up. And it shows him kind of like imprisoned. It kind of shows him laying down on the table with wine spilt that looks like blood. And it ends with him standing up, looking down on himself. It almost seems like those two representations are the id and the superego, right? The superego is the mighty, powerful, moral figure. The id, his weakened state, his childlike, infantile state. In those clash of the two, the question is, who's Jinwoo? And who is he going to become? Because his strong, mighty self, that's the superego. His weak, critical, almost like hateful self, that's the id. And so the entire middle ground is what the show is. Which way is Jinwoo going to be leaning?
Mm-hmm. You know, I've never really seen anyone compare end credits, but I do like that comparison. Because if you kind of think about it.
The comparison of his weaker self to the id and the stronger self to the superego?
Yeah, how they're like, in the end credits, and that is season 2 end credits, how they're like, what is it? Jealous and ashamed, right? How the id is jealous and ashamed of what he's now become.
Yeah, like the aspect of inherently kind of like, what do you call it? Like repressing jealousy and shame and anger. I mean, this is why Freud says psychoanalysis is needed in order to bring these things to light so that you can address them and take them head on. But one of the best examples he gives is like a lot of people who experience a limitation of intimacy, right, as a result of these negative neuroses. I mean, that's the hedgehog. You know, we were talking about the hedgehog. What he called analysis before.
How hedgehogs have quills and ergo they can't get super close to each other especially during like winter when it's cold, because if they get too close to each other, their quills will poke each other.
Yeah. And actually, the first one to bring that up, I believe, was Schopenhauer. It wasn't Freud, and Freud kind of like adopted it and went with it. But the whole idea is that like you have a porcupine, you have a hedgehog. The reason you have to keep people at a distance is because to have that expression of an intimacy is literally setting yourself up to be poked and hurt. But what's interesting within that structure is not like Freud gives the example built on Schopenhauer, saying that you're a hedgehog and anyone that comes next to you will be hurt, or that everyone else is a hedgehog and if they come close to you, you'll be hurt. It's that everything is, which means the same harm that you cause to other people is the same harm that the people around you cause. That like in itself, society in itself is neurotic.
Yes.
Society in itself is unhealthy, and that it's not good for people necessarily.
Didn't you get that from like the book Future of Illusion? The Future of an Illusion? I thought that book mostly covered like religion and how that's not good for a society.
Right. So what happens is that's one of the other mistakes that's very similar to the way that Nietzsche fell into these analysis, because he was going over a power structure. If you look at religion from a power structure, the biggest issue is that you just see it as a form of repression. Don't eat, don't touch, you're a sinner, you're going to hell, you're bad. Anything that you think, anything that you do, they see the application of any kind of theological construction as that repression that's causing so much problems, right? In
the book, he said something along the line of like, fear is religion is a coping mechanism for fear. That since people are so scared of death that they cope with, there has to be something after this. So there has to be a moral high ground, right?
Right. It's creating a sense, or at least within that analysis of a structure where it's a, like a mutually unbeneficial dependency, an unhealthy dependency, a codependency between religion and between the individual person, that since they can't be able to function within this given plane and this given time, there's the hope for something else somewhere else. The reality, once again, is that's whenever you apply a power structure, especially when it comes to a belief system, right? Anything can be coerced. If anything, it shows the danger maybe of some of the things that are substantial with what Freud is saying, is that when you have outside compulsion and outside coercion that's meant to be emphasized as a form of subordination, it does cause a sense of neuroses. The one thing that needs to be kept in mind, though, is there is such a thing as good parenting and bad parenting.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for instance, if you have a parent that's beating a child,
I believe there's 4 types of parenting.
right? That's beating a child out of frustration and anger. Of course, that is going to cause so much psychological and physical damage to that child. However, there is an aspect that discipline can be an expression of love. A loving father disciplines their child because they're setting up parameters to take care of them. And so it's the exact same thing. You can grab anything and turn it into a coercive power that's negative and that's damaging, or you can see parenting as something that's not damaging. It's something that can be an expression of a filial like love that takes care of their children and is sacrificial towards their children. And if you look like at a parental sacrificial love, is the exact same kind of parental, kind of like sacrificial love that was established by like the main tenets of what Christianity is.
So you think of like, since Jinwoo and his neuroses, right, his anxieties, do you think like later in the manga we know that the world gets destroyed, right, and he gets the chance to go back inside, do you think for him to like...
Wait, why did the world get destroyed again?
To remember that war that happened when the monarchs came in, right? All the monarchs came in and he just fought with all of humanity.
So the entire world is destroyed?
No, well, not like destroyed, but like a lot of people are dead, like massive dead. And he has the chance to go back in time and like save it all. So who wouldn't do that? And he does. But what I have a question is, or the point I'm trying to make is, I think that the world had to be destroyed for him to satisfy his id, to satisfy his like nature of wanting war. Because if you remember, after like everyone, not after, but during the war, he was able to completely unleash, since everyone was dying anyway, unlock all of his powers and just go full throttle. I think in order to like fulfill his id, he had to do that. And then he could go back in time and just restart it all like it never happened.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because it really gets the idea that if society itself is neurotic, one of the ways to limit that neuroses that being applied to you is just to get rid of society. If anything, I think you're making a good point when it comes to this. That
the Freudian slip.
Wait, what?
The slip. The slip of the tongue.
Wait, what are you talking about?
You just did a Freudian slip, my friend. Back to the German accent. What we start, we shall end this.
Okay. Whatever. I don't even remember what we were talking about. But go ahead.
Well, this is good. Well, you see, you slipped as a tongue. And since you slipped as a tongue, I think I should provide some of my own tongue twisters. Like, there's this one time they tried to save this dying man with an IV. It was all in vain, unfortunately. Nice smile.
Yeah.
If you smile again, I shall make you Verzabilled.
Okay, deal. If I smile again, I'll put on your dumb beard. Go ahead.
Okay, so let's see. Have another one. My therapist said I have a vengeful nature. We shall see. Okay. You know, this one time in my life I wanted to study medicine. Little did I know I didn't have the patience.
Did you hear this one? I wanted to study psychology, but I was a Freud.
You're part of the club now.
Oh, dude. I don't want to wear this thing.
I don't know the German word for friend.
I don't. I think it was Freud. Let me open this really quick. I think it was Freud who said that laughter is one of the main things that like calms down anxiety.
That is the best Anderson.
So
He's not the one that said that quote.
Is
but
that why
he-
you're? Oh, it's not him. He wasn't the one who said it.
He didn't say it, but he endorsed it.
Yeah, he endorsed. I don't think I can open this, dude. I'm putting it in my.
I guess he it really is vulnerable.
Dude, I don't want to wear this thing really. Okay. One last joke, and then I'll tell one last joke with the beard, and then I'm gonna take it off. How do I look?
Like Santa Claus.
Ho ho ho.
Merry Gibbs Gibbs.
Oh, okay. No, let me finish it. So, Nathaniel, tell me, do you enjoy your Freud?
Yes.
Oh, you do now, Fräulein. You enjoy the Freud.
I do think my pipe has a bad personality, though.
Oh, yes? Dude, I don't even know what to say with this thing on. I don't even know how I have it on right. It's in my mouth. Ugh. Ugh.
Welcome to the Freud experience.
I'm telling you, having a beard is not nearly this bad.
Oh, thank God, really?
Is there ever a time in Solo Leveling that he grows a beard, or is it just a man bun mullet?
No, I think it's just a man. I don't think he grows a beard. His dad grows a huge
Well,
one.
his dad beard rocks, yeah.
Very nice beard.
Okay. Well, any other Freud comments before I take this thing off and burn it, then throw it in the trash?
Just that you doing that will satisfy your
Okay.
id.
Wait, I got it. So tell me, Nathaniel, what do you see?
A chicken.
Chicken? Tell me, Nathaniel, what do you see?
A chicken.
Your mother.
How dare you insult my
Okay,
mother?
I'm done. Okay, son.
Till next time, Paulo.
Thank you guys so much for checking out my channel. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. If you want to see more content like this, hit the subscribe button, like, and share the video for more. And if you want to see more videos like this, hit the notification bell for more videos when they're uploaded. And so we can show our father that anime is worth his time.